Mentorship Monday. We are just going to give maybe a few more seconds for everybody to keep rolling in. And play a Erica, if you can go ahead and play the video, I think. Again, I just want to thank you all for joining us for this empowering virtual event where you'll learn the fundamentals of public speaking, master of the art of communication, and be inspired by the stories of our women leaders today. My name is Ekta Gaur. I am the co-chair of the Mentorship Committee. Unfortunately, my co-host, my chair, Tanisha, couldn't be here, but hopefully I'll do my best to fill her shoes. And here is kicking off our moderator, Sarah Sprayberry, who is, sorry, I'm looking for her bio. Sarah is a leader in the beverage industry with over 20 years of experience. She is currently serving as the Director of Sales Execution Nutrition for the Coca-Cola Company. Sarah has expertise in national retail sales, beverage operations, commercial planning, and strategy. She is passionate about employee engagement and mentorship and volunteers outside of work as a member of the Women of UGA. So thanks, Sarah. Here's to you.
All right, thank you so much, Ekta. So happy Mentorship Monday, everyone. It's so wonderful to see all of you all joining us today. I have the distinct privilege of introducing our panel for today's session. So first we'll begin with Dr. Belinda Stillian-Southard. So are we having a audio issue? Someone saying they can't hear?
I can hear you.
Okay, I can hear. Okay, perfect. Okay, so Dr. Belinda Stillian-Southard. So Dr. Southard is the professor affiliate faculty in the Institute of Women's Studies with a PhD in communications. Dr. Southard is a professor of the communication studies at the University of Georgia. She's the author of 2 award-winning books, How to Belong, which was published in 2018, and Militant Citizenship, published in 2011, and many journal articles. Her research and teaching focuses on how marginalized groups create social and political change through rhetoric. Our next panelist is Denise Wells. Denise is the Executive Director of Public Relations and Communications at Columbus Technical College in Columbus, Georgia. Denise is an author, educator, and motivational speaker with over 25 years of experience in leadership, public relations, and professional development in the educational, government, corporate, and arts and entertainment sectors. She's a highly sought after keynote host, moderator, facilitator, and panelist known for crafting inspirational and transformative messages for both in-person and online platforms. I want to welcome both Brenda and Denise to our panel today. Thank you so much. So let's get started on the topic. Before we jump in, we thought we would allow all of you all to just get your thoughts, kind of get those juices flowing. We want you to participate in a quick, easy poll. So we're going to open up the poll, and the question is, what makes a good speaker? Preparation, practice, poise, or all of the above? I'll give you all a minute to provide your answer. Just choose one and select submit. If we've got a good amount of responses, let me know. And then the result is, yes, most of us got it right. All of the above. So it's the 3 P's of presentation: preparation, practice, and poise. Those are all critical. Now that we've closed our poll, thank you very much for participating. Today's topic is an important one. It touches many of us in so many ways. During our session today, our panelists are going to share what they know, as academia and industry subject matter experts. They'll also answer the questions that you have about this topic. And then lastly, they're going to give you some tools and talking points that you can add to your business acumen toolkit. Now, I'll be guiding us through this process today, and we have a little less than an hour to explore this topic. So we're going to break this into distinct chunks. So first, we want to know our panelists' expert opinions on this topic. So we'll start there with a few questions from our panelists, and then the rest will come from you, the audience. We'll allow questions on camera with an open mic for Q&A. Finally, we're going to wrap up with a few tools that you can immediately use in your professional endeavors. So let's get right into it. Our first question, we're going to start by addressing one that one might consider the most important keys to effective public speaking, and that is preparation and delivery. So panelists, what can you share with the group about organizing the material, practicing, and delivering the speech with authenticity?
Well, I'll go ahead and get started. Can y'all hear me okay?
Absolutely.
All right, great. First, thank you so much, Sarah, for the lovely introductions, and thank all of you for taking time out of your work day and your busy lives to be here. So I'm just going to go ahead and get into answering this loaded question. And the question asked specifically about organizing, practicing, and authenticity. And I'm going to harp on that third one. A lot of times in public speaking, we immediately feel maybe anxious, even if you're just sitting around a table with some colleagues that you're very familiar with, you might get a little anxious. And the key, I think, instead of maybe thinking you need to run away from yourself and your quirks, and maybe the biggest fear you have, that idea of you're going to say the wrong thing, instead run towards yourself, because being yourself is the key to be able to speak authentically, I think. And in that sense, your audience will already be rooting for you, right? If they think you're coming to them as your most authentic self. Now, getting down to the nitty-gritty of it, in terms of organizing and practicing, organizing whatever kind of talk you're giving, again, whether it's just sitting down at a round table with some colleagues, or a really formal event where you're up on a podium in front of a large crowd, all of your brainstorming starts messy, right? Just low stakes. Start by jotting down a bunch of your ideas. Over time, you want to group them into subcategories, and eventually you'll come up with a flow that works. And then after that, I would say spend some silly time alone in a room. You're going to be talking out loud and talking through these ideas over and over. And that's when all of the refining will happen. Everyone says, the writing is in the editing. And then that point, it's going to be all about practice. So at that, I'm going to turn it over to Denise for her pearls of wisdom.
It's not a real meeting unless someone's muted, right? So I've done that for us this morning. But thank you all for being here. Thank you, Belinda, for your nuggets of wisdom. And what I would add to that is just to tell folks, make sure that, as the slide says, you're as prepared as possible. Don't wing it. Don't wait to the last minute. People can tell. They can tell when you're invested. They can tell when you're passionate. But more than that, they can tell when you're knowledgeable about the topic that you're rendering. The next one is be the expert on your topic. You're going to be the subject matter expert. So you've got to do your homework. If this is something that you speak on all the time, or something that you were formally educated in, it shouldn't be an issue. But sometimes, because of your expertise, or because of your poise, or the way that you've delivered in the past, you may be called upon to speak on topics that are not in your wheelhouse. And so when that happens, you want to make sure that you've got a firm grasp on the knowledge where, because there are going to be folks in the audience who are going to know some of those things, and they're going to know if you're a fake or a phony, or if you're dialing it in, you haven't done the work. And the more you do that, the more you're going to hit on that real question that came about around confidence. And so think about it for a minute. When you're your most confident, it's almost always when you're talking about what you know or what you've studied or what you've been approved or certified in. And so if you're speaking, whether it's for class, whether it's for, an expert panel, the knowing is really where you're going to have your power. And then as we talk about knowing, I'd be remiss if I didn't say know your audience as well. Who is it that you're speaking to? What are their proclivities? What are their levels of expertise? If it's a mixed audience, then you're going to run a different kind of scenario than if it's some folks who are, say, maybe in this course to learn more about public speaking or whatever your topic is. And so you're going to make sure that you kind of know what are the expectations, maybe review other speeches that have been delivered. Where did they go right? Where did they go wrong? All of that's going to really put you in a place where you're going to be able to hit that audience at the right level, at the right tone, so that they're able to receive what you're saying. And then hopefully also, which is what you really want, have an aha moment around the information that you presented, something they can take away, something they can start to use immediately. And then for yourself, you want to practice and rehearse. Research, practice, rehearse. You may have friends, confidants that will listen to you, or it may be colleagues, or it may be family, or it may be a group like Toastmasters. Whatever your entry point is, test it out. Test it out for folks before you go live. And as this slide says, seek professional training if you need to. And that falls under that Toastmasters and other places like that happily allow you to work out your delivery style. Cold calling works for sales, but cold crowds don't work for delivery of public speaking. So take that gem with you as well. Professor Stillian, who is on the call here today, handles personal delivery of coursework for our students at the University of Georgia. I have mentors in the program. I'm certified through the John Maxwell Leadership Academy as a certified speaker, teacher, and coach. Make sure that if you're going to be delivering, let's say you're asked to deliver for your church, but then you get that bug and you say, this is what I want to do. Don't do it half-cocked. Really take it seriously and get the professional training and development that you need in order to be really good at it.
All of those points are so perfect. And I agree with so many of those thoughts. And Belinda, the part about run towards yourself, I'm going to take, I wrote that down. So great recommendation. And Denise, just all the preparation and being an expert on what the material is you're presenting is going to be key. I like to use my 15-year-old daughter as my practice audience. I don't know about anyone in the audience who's your favorite person you like to present to as you're practicing, but definitely find that person that can help. Okay, so next, there's another few important keys for effective public speaking. And those are confidence and credibility. And before we dive in, we want to ask all of y'all in the audience, what are some methods you use to improve and show your confidence? Is it speak slowly and take pauses? Is it to take deep breaths? Is it to visualize or smile? Give you all a moment to submit your response. We have enough responses. We want to bring those up. Okay, so the majority lands in speak slowly and take pauses. So panelists, how did they do with their response?
They did really well. I think first and foremost, the one that got the most hits is the one that I would kind of lean in on. And during the actual speech, the first thing I would say is don't rush. It's going to be really important that, yes, you honor the time, frame that you've been given to speak, but also that you take a moment to set your own rhythm, set your own pace so that you're most comfortable and that you're able to think about what it is that you're delivering, that you're able to make sure that you're capturing all of the points that you intended. And the more calmly, the more slowly you move forward, setting that right tone, you're going to exude confidence to your audience. You're going to exude knowledge to your audience, and it's just going to be a better situation for all involved. The other thing I would say to folks is make sure that you're laser focused, right? Focus during your speech on giving the best speech possible. So you saw those other items that were in there on the poll. They're all part of the process. You want to make sure that you are indeed visualizing before the event, setting the intention for how you want the delivery to go, and then stay laser focused both on what's happening with your audience, but also what's happening with you internally. Sometimes you'll get downloads for, this is what I should be saying that I didn't prepare to say, but it's right in the moment. Now, don't get off track, and make sure that you're blocking out internal and external distractions, but also making sure that you're delivering that best speech by staying on track, by using meditation, reading, whatever works for you as the best method to prepare, and then also as part of your process as you get ready to move forward. The other thing that I think needs to happen is, even after your speech is over, take time to evaluate. This may not be the only time I think that you're going to deliver a particular speech, or even if it's a different topic later, it's always wonderful to evaluate what the audience thought about what it is that you shared with them, because that's going to inform the things that you did well, the things you need to improve on, because it's an ever-ending process. I'd love to tell you that there's a tried and true, this is how you're going to deliver in every scenario, but that's actually not correct. Every scenario kind of breeds itself for, this is what's needed at that time. And the more you evaluate, the more you're in tune with what the audience thinks of your delivery style, and what you gave them, the more spot on you're going to be as you move forward with other speeches. The last thing I want to say around this whole confidence thing is take time to celebrate, right? Even if you flopped, right, in your delivery, there's something that you got right. Celebrate yourself for what it is that you got right, right? Take that moment to say, I did a great job with this, this, and this. Yes, I may need to improve on that, but here are the things that went really well. Here are the things I'm going to put in my toolkit that I'll be able to use in other scenarios that require it. So I think those are the things I would say as it relates to during this actual speech, and also delivering at a high level.
Awesome. Thank you, Denise. I couldn't say anything better because it's just such a wonderful systematic way of preparing, speaking, and then evaluating and celebrating. I love this system. I'm going to be vulnerable here for a quick second and share a quick story about, as a young scholar, I was invited to give a response. This is a silly academic thing that we do. We get presentations and then we assign other professors to respond. And it was to really the single most prestigious conference in our field. And so it was quite an honor to be invited to give this response. Now, I had written this response and it was down months in advance. I had rehearsed and rehearsed. I had visual aids. You know, I had notes in front of me, but I didn't need them. I felt very confident and very prepared for this talk. And everything went just as it should until afterwards, when my colleagues, my peers were congratulating me and trying to, you know, we were all felt very new and young and didn't really know if we were doing okay. And if, you know, the more advanced scholars thought we were good enough. But one of them did say, you know, it was really fast. And I went, oh no, it was fast. And I could tell the others were trying to not agree so heartily that, yeah, it's a little fast. And I realized, oh no, I did go really fast. I thought for some reason that sounding intelligent and prepared, right, meant that you needed to hit your points hard and fast. And I realized that for my next many talks, I needed to prepare in a way that kept me from making that same mistake. I then took to recording myself in rehearse when I rehearsed. And when I watch them back, I know some of you are probably thinking what I'm thinking, which is that is your worst nightmare, is to look at yourself on camera. But boy, did it teach me to speak slowly. And as a professor, this is the number one thing that I see with my public speaking students, is that they have done all of the preparation and they're so ready to give this speech. And they realize that when they get up there, the nerves are telling them, go, 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 go. And it's just way too fast. And not only does a fast delivery keep your audience from being able to comprehend what you're saying and stick with you every step of the way, right? Because what you're asking them is to identify with you on point A and then take that leap with you to point B, and so on and so on. But then you're not enunciating as well. And perhaps if you're speaking too fast and you're getting the content out so quickly, you're not making eye contact with the folks around you. You're not telling your audience that they can trust you, right? And it's that trust, right, and that care that they need to feel. So I got to tell you, Denise cannot be, more correct, if that's even a phrase, right? Could be more spot on than saying, once you have done all the prep, when it comes to delivery, your only job is to say, I got this, take a minute, go to the restroom before, look yourself in the mirror and be like, dang, you're smart. And dang, you look great, and your job is to just, well, I'm going to tell this story and I'm going to give this presentation and I'm going to exude that I care about what my audience hears. So I do think it's important to sort of share our mistakes too on these journeys, and just know that everyone in your audience is rooting for you.
Thank you, Belinda and Denise. And I'm sure there's a lot of folks on the call, just like myself. I have recorded myself and practiced, and that is so helpful. It can be painful as well. I agree, but it has really helped me. So many great pearls of wisdom you ladies have shared so far. So we're going to transition here, and we're going to talk about a few topics that are adjacent to the topic of public speaking. Okay, so first, networking. How about networking? How can we build connections through effective communications in this area?
I think I'll take a quick second to talk a little bit about networking. So when you network, you're shifting to interpersonal communication. I'm sorry about that. There you go. So Denise muted herself and I turned off my camera. But you're switching to interpersonal communication, which can almost, for some folks, be more anxiety inducing. But I think the key for networking is, one, making yourself available, attending these events, right? And then two, don't think of it as this big moment where you're presenting yourself. You'll have the tools that you need to talk about yourself and the things that you do and do well. But also keep in mind that people love to talk about themselves. So if you go with some few simple questions, you will do just fine. And those questions can be simply, oh, nice to meet you. What do you do? And I'm telling you, people love to talk about what it is they do. And another great question is, what do you like about what you do? That will give you a lot of information, not only about perhaps careers that you're interested in, things about the types of people that they might know doing what they do. And then at the end of a talk like that or a chat like that, you can simply say, well, that's really wonderful. Would you mind if I followed up with an email and maybe we could have another conversation? So really keeping it that simple will hopefully reduce the anxiety of having these kinds of conversations. So when it comes to networking, I said, so have those tools in your pocket and remember that you aren't always given mentors, that you need to cultivate them in a way. So again, think of it, visualize these folks out there rooting for you and eager and ready to support you and connect you.
Thank you so much, Belinda. And Denise, I'm going to give this one to you about interviewing. So are there any skills that can be used effectively during the interview cycle to land the job? And then also, can our audience prepare for successful job interviews? Do you have some tips regarding that?
I do. And I think my thoughts on this is consider networking also as a kind of interview. And so the advice that I'm going to give is going to work probably in both of those settings. How you speak, what you say. Yes, it matters when you're delivering a speech, but also in networking and interviews. How do you show up? What's your tone? Do you seem nervous? Do you seem relaxed? Do you seem confident? All of these things are going to be really important as people are meeting you for the first time, or as people are perceiving you, I would say, for the first time, and trying to figure out if you're someone that they want to create synergy with, right? Focus on commonalities. As the conversation goes, a lot of what Belinda said is correct. What are those things in a job setting that folks are looking for that either you've done that work or you have transferable skills that would be useful in any scenario, but specifically in the scenario that they're looking for. And so you want to create synergy around those. A lot of folks get, discouraged because they'll see something or be asked a question about something that they haven't done that specific type of duty. Well, if you've worked in any capacity long enough, you likely have a transferable skill that would get that particular job title or role or duty done. You just need to package yourself in a way that it's receptive to the person who is listening to you. And so you want to ask them a lot of questions, because who doesn't love to talk about themselves? And people shy away from that in interviews. If you can turn the table and get folks talking about themselves, they're going to leave that interaction thinking, oh my gosh, I really had a wonderful conversation with her. Or I really had a wonderful conversation with him. And so get them to talking, get them to telling you what day-to-day looks like. That's kind of moving you away from the actual job description, but more into the real life scenario that happens, and say, oh, that reminds me of a time when I did this, or oh, that really mirrors, tell stories, because as you're telling stories, guess what? You're making connections. You're making viable connections that people can pay attention to and that they can also trust. You're showing your authenticity while you're also showing your ability to handle whatever is going to be thrown at you. So make sure you're making that connection. The one thing that I love to tell people is ABC. If you haven't written anything down yet, write this one down. It's going to be a doozy. ABC, always be closing. Now, I'm an English major. I know that that wasn't correct English, but having that major means that I know when things have not been spoken correctly, not that I always speak correctly. Okay, now that that's out of the way, always be closing. Book another meeting if it's a networking scenario. Confirm that you're going to be on a call. Ask to be introduced to others. If you have a networking opportunity with someone and you figure out, there is no synergy, there's no match, doesn't mean that they don't know others who would be synergy for you. And so make sure that you make that request. I would love to be introduced to your contacts who are working along the same lines as the things that I'm interested in. Is there anyone we could have some additional conversations? How do we move this needle along? So make sure you're doing that in the networking space, but always be closing in the interview space. Here's the one question that you have to ask. It's like playing tic-tac-toe and you cornered your opponent. You're going to ask them, is there anything you're looking for the person to fill this role that either you haven't seen in my credentials or that we haven't discussed today? When you ask that question, a really good interviewer who knows horse and pony is going to probably sit back in their seat and they're going to say, okay, this person knows how to close the deal. Because that forces them, they now have to tell you, well, no, actually, I was looking for this. And then you get to rebut and say, oh, well, let me tell you about my experience with that. Or they have to admit, There's nothing I'm looking for that I don't see in you, and you are a very high candidate. And now we're in the discussion around, when do you plan to make your decision? How soon should I hear back from you? What's your preference about me reaching out? You know, and then you take the conversation to the next logical progression. So if you didn't catch that, I'll say it one more time. That question is there anything you're looking for the person you're hiring for this role that either you haven't seen in my credentials or that we haven't discussed? And that's going to land you probably, if nothing else, the next interview. And at the highest level, you're going to get the job.
Oh my gosh, brilliant. I love that. I love that. And I'm trying to jot down as I'm paying attention to you. That is brilliant. And I love the part that you said about making connections, whether you're networking or interviewing, because I've heard so many stories about, hey, you didn't, you know, someone interviewed, maybe didn't get the role, but if you're able to make that connection, that could parlay you into another role that the panel that you interviewed with, another role in the organization that they're aware of that you would be perfect for. So always find a way to make a connection. I love that too. Okay, so let's transition to the elevator pitch. This is a lot of folks' favorite topic. So let's talk about elevator pitch. How effective is it, and what should it convey? What's an example of an elevator pitch? Maybe we have a couple folks in the audience that would like to share. Feel free to raise your virtual hand if you want to share your elevator pitch. Otherwise, we can hand it over to Denise and Belinda to share with us their thoughts.
All right. Well, the slide that's on your screen right now, what I would say to you is make sure that your elevator pitch is one that's compelling, one that's engaging, and one that's measurable. There's an example on the screen that shows you, and this could be your elevator pitch for whether you are trying to network with someone, whether you're trying to land a contract or deal or a further discussion, whether you're trying to move something forward. So don't really get caught up on the way that the pitch is framed on your screen. Know that all of that wording is interchangeable. So for example, the screen right now shows language that says, my business solution is a product or service. You drop in what your product or service is, called, name whatever it is that it's called, that cracks an urgent problem facing a customer, and you state what that problem is. So because I'm a public speaker, my example on the screen following this particular tried and true, you can dump anything in there you like, would read, my public speaking platform is a fully interactive strategy that engages both educational and professional audiences on how to successfully mentor and sponsor individuals towards optimum performance. And so when I speak in this way about what I do, people are really, you help me out in the chat. If I were to walk up to you, we're having a conversation, and I say this to you, what would you think it is that I do? What's my task? What's my job? What's my business? Put it in the chat if you're following. Yeah, I'm public speaking. I'm a coach. Absolutely. Like you're not guessing, well, what is it that she does? You kind of know. And then who is it that I provide no, wait, let me stop. What kind of services do I provide? Are they boring or are they compelling? If they're compelling, what language do you see that lets you know that it's compelling? There you go, interactive. Professional, I'll take professional. I'll take all of that. Who is my audience? Who am I delivering these kinds of talks and scenarios to? Somebody said all. Yes. Yeah. to everybody, whoever will listen. Very good. But educational and professional schools and companies, absolutely. And then here's the piece that I add in that lets folks know that you're going to be able to measure how well I do the work that I do, and that it's also going to be engaging. I'm going to show you how to successfully mentor and sponsor. Everybody type mentor and sponsor. Mentor and sponsor. That's another talk, but there's no mentorship without sponsorship, which is what I teach, towards your bottom line, towards optimum performance. What company do you know? What school system do you know is not looking for optimum performance? If you think they are, give me a raise your hand or something in the class, or raise your hands. Just say, I think they are, or give me a thumbs down. No, I don't think they're looking for that. Okay. My question for you, if given now this example, do you feel confident that you would now be able to write your own elevator pitch? And keep in mind, this keeps you under 30 seconds, because if it's more than 30 seconds, the elevator's open and they're gone. Do you feel confident that you would now be able to write your own elevator pitch for what it is you do and feel confident about what it is that you're presenting to others? Yes. Okay. Very good. Very good.
So Denise, I want to ask you a question about elevator pitches. Academics are the most guilty of this problem, but of using insider terms, of using big words to throw around that maybe only people in your industry, in your area, maybe even only in your organization know. And so for someone like me, it can be harder to translate what I do to a broader audience. So what advice do you have for people like me who, you know, might get down in the weeds a little bit too much with our word choices?
Well, I think it's the same as giving the speech kind of dialogue that we're having here today, is know your audience. If you are speaking to or delivering a pitch to someone who is in your field, then absolutely use that wordsmithing, because it lets them know that you are tried and true, that you are developed in a way that you know the lingo and that you can speak it. Because in our professions, we do have terminology that tell us whether or not someone is authentically prepared or whether they are, you know, just starting out. I can tell very easily by the language that you choose where you are in that setting. If indeed you're speaking to someone who is out of your sphere of influence as it relates to your actual work or profile or in education, then you want to use words that you know are going to be more compelling to them. So the same as the always be closing, you want to make sure that you're using language that, for example, if I'm talking to someone who is a Fortune 500, right? I'm still going to be true and authentic about the work that I do, but I'm going to use some zinger in there that's going to appeal to them. Luckily mine, because, you know, I have that periphery, optimum performance, I know is a buzzword that's going to get to them every time, right? And so that, and you just, so that brings up a very good point, which is once you develop a pitch, that doesn't mean that's your singular pitch. Right. You may need to tweak it time and time again for whomever it is that you're delivering to make sure, again, that you're creating the synergy that you want to create. But it shouldn't veer too far to the left from what it is that you do. It just might have a word here or there that's exchanged to create the connection that you want to create.
Yeah.
Does that make sense to you guys?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, now that we have Denise's tried and true formula, is there anyone in the audience who now wants to volunteer and, you know, take a shot using this example?
We have Kim Costa, who has raised her hand to volunteer. Go ahead, Kim.
Okay, this is the elevator pitch, correct? Okay. This is my shot at it. I'm a realtor and a writer, so I'm writing a book on a process to help people find the perfect home. So, elevator pitch. My wheelhouse assessment is a client-centric process that helps homeowners achieve self-actualization and transcendence through their homes and lifestyles. Is that too?
One more time for me.
Do it again. My wheelhouse assessment is a client-centric process that helps homeowners achieve self-actualization through their homes and lifestyles.
So, question for you. I love that you have flowery terminology because I love flowery terminology, but I
Right.
wonder if there are those who you would lose their interest simply because they aren't really clear on what it is that you said.
I definitely would think that. I was about to add directly after, that sounds too woo-woo. So, I mean, it's a very practical process, actually. So I think I could be more clear on, but then it gets very wordy. You know, you're supposed to keep it short, aren't you?
Yes. Keep it short, but also keep it in a way that aligns with, here is what it is that I am able to offer, and I know you need this service. So if you think of it in that way, you're making sure that you are able to say what you want to say, but you're also able to directly align with your customer in a way that they can't turn you down.
Right, and so that they're clear on what the outcome is. Yeah. So
Correct.
really the benefits to them would be not wasting time or money on what is usually the biggest purchase of their lifetime.
There you go. Now, question, are you in this pitch pitching for the services that you offer as a realtor or for the book that you're wanting to convey? Because I wasn't sure.
Really, it will be for the book, which then parlays into speaking and referrals nationally, and a small part of local business that I currently do. So really, it's to be a thought leader in the industry, to change the industry from being transactional to client focused.
So you'd need to break those up into two, because you would need a pitch directly for the book, but then you'd also need a pitch for, I also want to help you in this service arena.
Exactly. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Kim, I was just curious, is the wheelhouse assessment, is that something that you have written or something you have invented?
Yes, it's a combination of Maslow's hierarchy and the Wheel of Life. So it's been trademarked, copyrighted, and it's just me putting it together and applying it to purchasing a home.
I love it.
That's wonderful. So I think, you know, just to sort of extend what Denise was saying, was when you're trying to sell maybe the book, you can talk about the wheelhouse assessment. But then again, if clients already know what this assessment is, then you can go ahead and lead with that. I think it's great that you've got something that's your own and trademarked. That is, and branded, really smart. The word that I was caught on was, I think, self-actualization, or I think transcendence was there in the beginning. So self-actualization, I can kind of get, you're trying to, like, you know, you want to match the home with the vision of your life, right? Of who you see yourself as. I think our homes very much help us become the people maybe we want to be, you know. That's a really important part of everyone's lives, the space around them. So I just want to validate that I see where you're going with that. And I think, you know, to keep, you know, write down a bunch of different words that kind of relate, that, you know, maybe interchange with them, so that there's a little bit more clarity there. But I just, you know, I just want to say, you know, I do have a sense for a whole there, like a coherent, you know.
I think so too. And as I wrote it down, it's like, I understand what that means, but it needs to be more accessible to someone who, I have to change their mind from, I just need to find a home real quick, to let's go through the process so you don't make a mistake. Yeah. Thank you for the clarity, both of y'all.
Kim, thank you also for being a brave participant and sharing your pitch with everyone. Hopefully you got some really good feedback. I think it sounds like you did. Definitely. So now we're going to transition, and that's to you all, to the audience. I'm sure you've been listening to the session and writing down some questions that you'd like to ask of the panelists. So we'll hand it over to you. So how we'll do this is, if you want to ask a question, just please raise your virtual hand. And then I also ask you, just state your question first, and then give us 1 or 2 sentences to help understand the context. So if you'd like a specific panelist also to answer the question, just make sure that you mention that panelist's name first, and then provide the question and the context. Sound good? So we will hand it over to you all. I am not able to see anything coming in, so I guess I will allow Erica and Raylan to lead us through the questions that you're seeing.
Yes, we have a couple of questions that were entered into the chat earlier, and then we'll get to our first alum who has raised her hand, Elizabeth. So our first question that was put in the chat, going back to some of that opening conversation about what to do when you're doing that speaking in that arena, one of the questions was, do you have any tips on what to wear to speak on stage? So that could be for either of you ladies. Okay, go for it, Denise.
Well, first and foremost, you want to be comfortable. This is a time to wear something that is going to make you feel and look, if we're talking to all women here, pretty. But at the same time, it's not too tight, it's not tugging, or the heels aren't too high, or they're not pinching your toes. You want to make sure that you're comfortable, but you don't want to be lackadaisical, right? You also want to make sure that you're speaking with the host about whether there is anything on stage. There should be a dry run, a run of show of some type, a rehearsal, so that you know your setting, to make sure that what you're wearing is not going to clash with any other color combos that are happening around you, right? So some women are very segmented on, you should be in a dress or a suit. But it's going to depend on your audience, because if you're speaking, say, to high schoolers, you may look too dressed up for them, but you also want to make sure that you're not down dressed so that you don't look professional. So it's a really tight, fine line that you want to walk with that. But if you're comfortable and you know that it's business casual, probably is as low as I would go. And then depending on the setting, up to formal business. But your setting is going to denote what that should look like.
I would echo Denise's response and just add that when you are practicing your talk, practice in the clothes that you're gonna wear. Yeah. And even the jewelry, if you wear jewelry, because what I see all the time, and I tell folks this, is that you have these natural tics, you don't know you have them. So you have to record yourself, because you're going to be nervous and you're going to pull on your necklace and not know it. You're going to fix your hair constantly and not realize you're doing that. And it's going to train you, right? You have to know things in advance, like, is there a podium? Because then you're worried about making sure your hands are rested on the podium, so you're not. I love to gesture, but it's sometimes people have, these delivery sort of tics, and you need to iron them out, and that is directly related to what you're wearing. And you want to not think about what you're wearing when you're speaking, and you don't want your audience to think about what you're wearing while you're speaking.
Someone mentioned in the chat, know the height of the audience. So if you're wearing a skirt, absolutely. If you're wearing that skirt and it's too short, you're in trouble. So yes, you do want to know all of those things and consider all those things as you're picking out your wardrobe.
All right, thank you so much, ladies. Our next question from the chat before we go to our raised hand is referencing the question to ask at the end of the interview. Is there anything that you're looking for that you haven't seen in my resume or you didn't hear in the conversation? That closing question. One awesome question about that is, how do you answer if you don't have experience in that area that they mentioned, that you're not able to say, oh, well, let me tell you about my experience in ABC XYZ?
So the one thing that you want to do, which is what we talked about earlier, is determine if there's a transferable skill. There should be something in your wheelhouse. Well, I won't say should be. There could be something in your wheelhouse that would translate to, I would know how to handle this type of request or this type of duty, even though I've never had it formally on my resume as part of what I do day to day. But here's what I've done that feels very similar. The other thing you can do is be very transparent and say, I'm very interested in this particular type of work. I haven't yet had the experience, but if you've viewed it, if you've seen someone else do it, that's very valid. For example, I didn't realize that I knew how to cook certain things that I had watched my grandmother cook every day until I got to UGA and had to cook it for myself. And then I went, look at there, I know how to cook that because I've seen it so much. You can repeat it. And so be very, very verbose about, I've shadowed or I've watched or I've worked directly next to someone who's had that skill set. So if it's part of what I would need to do, I feel compelled that I'd be able to do it. Final is be honest and say, you haven't seen it, you haven't done it, but you'd be willing to get training. And so, that formal discussion is, I have not yet had that particular experience, but I'd be willing to add it to my wheelhouse. If there are opportunities for training, I'd love to be able to pursue them with you, learn on job. There are going to be some things I imagine in this role that I'll have to learn, and I would add that to it gladly because I really want to work for it. And so just be very transparent about all of that. Whichever lane you fall in that lane, speak honestly, and try to see if you can still make something happen.
Perfect. Now we have an alum who has their hand raised, and that's Elizabeth. Elizabeth, if you'll unmute yourself.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to know what are some tips or some advice that you can give us for communicating effectively virtually, since we do live in a world where it's common to both, work remote, but even for people who don't work remote meetings are certainly common now. And I will point out, I've been watching both of you, and I think that you do it excellently, but I would just like some practical advice from you on how to do that. Make sure that when I'm communicating virtually, that I'm doing it effectively. I came from an AV company previously, so I was always on camera and got comfortable with that. In my current role, we're never on camera, but it's all virtual. So I want to do what I can to make sure it's clear. Thank you.
Belinda, do you want, or you want me to?
Yeah, I was going to ask for clarification. So Elizabeth, thank you for the question. Are you asking virtually like Zoom? But you said it's
Right.
all virtual, but you aren't on camera.
Yeah, either way. I mean, whether you're like, and normally I would be on camera. I don't have a problem with it, but I know how I look today and wasn't prepared for that. But, when you're on camera, anytime you're remote in a meeting, like a Zoom meeting or a Teams meeting, how do you make sure that you're clear in communication? And I know in my experience, it's much harder when you can't see people because you can't read people on what their reactions are. Body language is telling you. So I just like your advice.
Well, there's two components at least, nonverbal and verbal. And so in the nonverbal, I think most of us during the great COVID, I'm not quite sure what we're calling it, but the great Zoom boost learned, right, how to frame ourselves and, have some kind of prop. I mean, they sell all kinds of the props that will, hold up your laptop if you're using a laptop so that you are sort of at eye level. And are there other sort of nonverbal parameters to consider in terms of background and whatnot? Verbally, you want to go into your meetings with an idea of the points that you want to make.
Okay.
And if it's coming across as not clear because folks aren't giving you that, I love to read nonverbal feedback, but we all know on Zoom, you're either cameras are off, right? And we don't know if it's someone's listening face or bored face.
Right.
You know, so I'm a big I give a lot of nonverbals. I do nod, and then whatever functions are available to you, the thumbs up and so forth, right? To ask for feedback. I always ask for feedback, and some kind of gestures, so that folks, not even if they agree with me, but do you follow, right? Are we here? Do you have the documents that you need so that everyone is looking at them at the same time? And I think finally is that most people might not have a listening span where they say more than 10 minutes. Isn't that funny? And yet professors want students to listen for an hour and 15 minutes. So to have a sense of what it is you want to say, I don't know that it has to be really polished. It totally depends on the occasion. But to be able to say it in a way that doesn't, drone on and on. I think that's my feedback off the top of my head.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
I think the first thing I would say is be more successful than we've been this morning with having your mic unmuted and your camera on, because that's going to be important if you're leading the meeting,
Right.
just to soften that up. But then also, depending on who your audience is, again, I can't say enough. Your audience is going to really determine what's going to work in any of these settings. For me, I do a lot of virtual meetings with my team because we're at a college campus and we're in different areas of the campus. And so I'll need to meet with a lot of different people in a lot of different buildings at the same time. And virtually just seems to be the best way, the most efficient way sometimes to get that done. And what I love to be able to do in those meetings is, number one, honor the time frame that we have. So if you've said it's going to be an hour, you should be managing the time in a way that you can be really mindful of that, so that folks appreciate coming to your meetings, knowing that it's not just a time waster. Okay. The other thing I would say is to make sure that it's really productive, and you're not the only one that's speaking. If you're the only one who's speaking, folks are going to log in and then, begrudgingly not want to always do that because you're the only voice. So you're going to have to share the wealth in a way that folks feel like they're contributing, they're a part of the discussion. And again, this is just for work meetings, right? So that they feel invested. And I need to come because I'm integral to this particular thing that happens, and my thought leadership or my deliverable is needed in order for this to work well. And so that may mean sometimes you have the meeting before the meeting where you may have to give that person the deliverable so that they can present. There are lots of ways to play nice in the sandbox, but do that so that folks feel like it really matters whether or not I'm a part of the session. The other thing I would say is to make sure that as you're having these meetings in this virtual environment, that it's productive in a way that folks leave or folks come knowing what the agenda is. What is it that we're talking about? I don't want to just waste my time in a meeting and I don't know what the points are or how I would be able to contribute. And then also they leave with true takeaways. Here's why I needed to be in this meeting, because otherwise I wouldn't have this information. I wouldn't know what next steps were. And so you're going to follow up from that virtual meeting. Someone should be the scribe, whether it's you or whether it's someone that you appoint, so that you can make sure that you're moving the needle forward. I have a spreadsheet that I like to use. It's color coded, it lights up, it tells us it's tracking. For this particular meeting, these were the objectives. Here's who is responsible. Here's what the deliverable is and the due date. And so if we're coming up on the date that it's due, it's going to turn blue. And after we've missed that deadline date, that line item is going to turn red. And so that tracker creates accountability. And it also makes our meetings meaningful because we already know what we're discussing. We know what's due, we know when it's due, and we know how to report when we come to the meeting.
Wonderful, wonderful thoughts. Thank you so much, Denise and Belinda. So I think it's time to transition to our last section of our session today. And that's where the panelists are going to lead us through an interactive activity that they've prepared. While we close, I did want to hand it over to Denise and Belinda to give us something, like if you had one thing that you wanted everyone to take away from the session today, what would that one thing be that we need to remember? And I'll start with Denise.
Just one thing. Okay.
Or two.
I think honesty, vulnerability, making sure that anytime that you're speaking, that it rings true, that again, you're knowledgeable of the subject matter, bringing new insights, something that's unique, a variable that when the person has experienced you through a speaking engagement, they're going to leave better than they came, right? I want folks to think of speaking, public speaking in any way as it's called a presentation because it's a gift. And so it's the gift that you give to others for spending time with you. They should leave with something that allows them to shine better in the life that they live and in the work that they do.
Interaction and expertise. Great points. Belinda?
I'm going to finish where I started, I think, with authenticity. Your audience wants to feel safe. And when you're anxious or nervous, which is a totally okay thing to be because your audience relates to that, right? But when they see you sort of maybe turn inward, or maybe you're beating yourself up, it's not going so well, remember, all you have to do is really be yourself and say, oh my goodness, excuse me, I'm sorry, let me back up for a second. Totally cool. They get it. They're rooting for you. So as long as at the end of the day, you're being yourself, right? You've done the research, you've done the prep, you know the sort of new, interesting, unique contribution you're going to make, right? The delivery part, whatever is making you anxious, just remember that you're a human and they're humans. And it's the care that you put into this talk that's going to come through. So that'd be it.
I love it. Authenticity and be yourself. It's very, very important. Thank you so much, Denise and Belinda both. So before we transition, I do have a quick public announcement for the Women of UGA Council before we get started in our activity. A couple things that we did want to mention to make sure that all of you alumni that have participated are aware of. First up is Dog Day of Giving. Our annual Dog Day of Giving is March 26th. That's coming up. It's a 24-hour fundraiser where we'll be calling all dogs to participate and to give. Any size is acceptable. You should have already received some of these notifications from your respective colleges. The next one is Women of UGA. We have put together this awesome inaugural event. We would like to invite everyone to participate in the Ladies Legacy Luncheon. It will be occurring on Sunday, April 28th, and it's going to be from noon to 3 at the ASW Distillery in Buckhead. It's going to be a fantastic event. Hopefully all of you all can jot it down, keep it on your calendar, and attend with us. It's going to be wonderful. The registration link will be sent out shortly so that you can register for the event. And then lastly, Kendra Scott, we are having a Kendra Scott virtual shopping event, a weekend coming up just in time for Mother's Day. It's going to be a great opportunity for you to shop for Mother's Day, or even your graduation gift for your loved ones, or for those that you know that are graduating. And it will be online, and also they will have a trunk show at the Legacy Luncheon, and a portion of the sales, 20% of these sales, will go to the Women of UGA Scholarship Fund. So hopefully all of y'all can come. It will be online even for folks that are not located in Atlanta for the luncheon. You can still participate in the Kendra Scott event. And then lastly, we hope you've enjoyed today and Mentorship Monday in our series. Please take a moment to complete the quick survey. It's about 6 questions long. via this QR code that's on the screen and help us make improvement for future iterations for Mentorship Mondays. All right, great. So I'm going to hand it over to Belinda and Denise, and they're going to take us through this wonderful interactive exercise that they have prepared for today. Thanks, Denise and Belinda. Over to you.
I think that was the pitch assignment. I could be wrong about that, though.
Oh, that's a pitch. Oh, let's continue. Oh, I'm so happy. I was not quite informed on what that exactly was. So let's go back to the pitch page. And hopefully some folks have been making notes, and some of the alumni on the session today to share your pitch with the team. Kim has already volunteered as the brave volunteer first up with her pitch. Anyone else would like to share your pitch with our panel experts and get their feedback? I guess we can transition possibly if Raylan, if there were some questions that came in that we did not get to during the session, then we could jump over there to continue answering some questions that were submitted.
Certainly. Hold on. Let me scroll up. We did get another question that Dr. Stillian-Southard was able to answer, but just going to put it out there in case anyone else might have some additional advice. Here's the question from Danielle. I typically don't have a problem speaking in large groups in a roundtable setting. However, the minute I have to stand up in front of a large group, I forget everything I've practiced and even information that I know like the back of my hand. I have a lot of anxiety around being the center of attention. Do you have any tips or suggestions that might help with this? And Dr. Belinda was able to share, it's always okay to have note cards with keywords or phrases to help you remember your main points. Is there anything else that either of you ladies might suggest?
Yeah, I would say that I know that sometimes we'll rehearse and rehearse and rehearse so that it's memorized, and that's okay. It's not always advised though, because if you memorize, the danger is that if you get to a point where you've sort of blanked out, you won't be able to adjust for a hot second and then pick up where you left off. Often you'll have to pick up from the beginning or pick up from a previous point. That makes any sense? And so it's better to have your speech to speak extemporaneously instead, which is, you have on a note card or something that looks professional to have up, like your iPad or something, just some keywords. That way you're not drawn to looking down or reading something, right? You will have to look up, but just some key phrases, maybe at the beginning of important sections, that's okay to have in front of you so that you can glance at it, look away. And then you remember, the parts that you have there. That's always okay. That's my thought.
And I agree wholeheartedly. I love a great slide deck. So I would always ask when I'm working with the team that's developing the talk, if there will be opportunities to share slides, because what the slides do is twofold. They're going to be visually compelling to your audience, but then they're also going to be reminders to you for what it is that you should be saying. And so that's a win-win. When there's not the opportunity to have slides, I think that what Professor Stillian has presented is absolutely spot on. Let's say you walk out of your office or hotel or wherever you are and you forget your note cards. The other thing you can do is use a particular place in the audience. If it's a familiar face or someone who brings you comfort, that will sometimes bring back to recall what it is that you feel like you might have forgotten. If not, get there early enough that you're able to have somewhere hopefully directly behind the audience straightforward that you're able to concentrate on, focus on, so that that will help with your recall as well. Ultimately, it's going to be that practice, practice, practice. But what it sounds more like is it's a confidence issue, and it's an issue with making sure that you don't get frightened by the audience once they appear. And so again, finding that friendly face who is supporting you, or distracting yourself by finding somewhere else in the audience to focus your concentration will help with some of that.
One thing I've been able to use throughout my career in presentations is to make sure that you get your message across, and to also help you remember is to start with the 3 things that you're going to share in your discussion today. And then you're going to share the 3 things, and then you're going to tell the audience about the 3 things. And then you're going to tell the audience what the 3 things were again. So just that repetition, and it also helps you. So if you get to close and you're closing on the 3 things, you might remember, oh, I didn't share the last thing. So it helps you stay on task with the 3 messages you want to deliver.
So that's that tell them again, and tell them that you told them.
Yeah.
Very good.
Lean on that quite often.
We had a couple of tips that some of our fellow alumni were able to provide. Virginia shared, hey, when those virtual meetings, please remember to look at the camera on your screen and not at the pictures and everyone's images in their boxes. So it feels like you're looking directly at that person, or they feel that way. So that was one little nugget that was shared. Another nugget that was shared when it comes to doing the slide decks. Make sure you're not putting too much information on there that draws the listener away from what you're saying and what you're presenting, because hello, you're the expert, right? And then had a kind of like a question type of comment from one of our alumni of, don't you think that having a bit of humor throughout your presentation is helpful? How do you all feel about humor in presentations?
I have some strong feelings about humor because I'm not funny. Maybe it's funny to say I'm not funny, but humor is a careful thing, because you want to be, one, it can fall flat. If you have something planned, it can fall very flat, and you will actually set back, the trust or the relationship that you've already developed with your audience. And 2, it might not be everyone's humor. So obviously be very careful and, thoughtful. If there's some sort of insider joke that you can make that is not offensive, I would suggest trying it out, asking a few folks that are going to be there. Does this sound okay? But just remember, if you are not naturally funny, like if you aren't a comedian or you're not quick, just don't. Go be your best self. That's it. And the most important thing is so that people trust you, and they feel comfortable listening to you, and they know that what you're saying comes from a place of care. But if there are some safe ways to make folks laugh, usually self-deprecating works, but again, don't get too deep. It's a tricky line. So, it's not for beginners, I guess is what I'd say.
I agree. It's a very careful sport. Humor can be, I think more so than humor, I would say be more lighthearted, so that folks feel at ease with you. If there is a funny that you can include that, as Professor Stillian says, doesn't offend anyone, then absolutely drop it in if it's a value add. And so I want to be really clear about saying it must be a value add. It must be a logical progression. It will need to make sense in context with whatever else that you're delivering. And if there are opportunities for that, then absolutely include them, embed them into what you're delivering. But if there are not, or if you don't have that kind level of connection where it makes complete sense, then I would stay far, far away from.
those are all of the questions from the chat. So if there are others, ladies, you're welcome, or I'm sorry, attendees, you're welcome to raise those hands and we can address those live if anyone has them. We don't have any hands raised at this time.
If no one has anything, I would love to share this. Someone asked the question earlier about presenting virtually and being on camera. And I recall coming out of the pandemic, I did participate in one of those, work sessions around that topic. And I vividly recall the statement. It's like the instructor told us, everyone is a new newscaster now. So think about a newscaster when you watch them on TV and how they approach presenting and talking, and the angle is critical. Said no one wants to stare up your nose if you're presenting because it can be preoccupying to your audience. Just think about your angle, your lighting. You want to make sure that the background is not something that's going to take focus away from you and your message that you're giving. So think about all those things. But I love the saying is like, we're all newscasters now. So think about that when you're on camera. Thought I'd share.
Perfect.
Anyone else? Otherwise, I can hand it over to Ekta.
Alrighty.
Out.
Thank you so much to our panelists, Dr. Belinda and Denise Wells, for your expertise today. The Women of UGA Council definitely appreciates you joining us for our Mentorship Monday. We hope that you feel more comfortable making your voice heard now, and I wish everybody have a great day and go dogs. Thank you, Sarah, too, for moderating.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Denise and Belinda. Go dogs.
Go dogs.
Go dogs.
All right.
Take care.
Bye, guys.